Okay, let's take a pause. What we find can be helpful in taking a pause is we might like to close our eyes. It's not essential, of course, but we might like to. Let's ensure that we're comfortable in the chair. Notice where the body meets the support of the chair and the contact, the physical sensation of touch in the body, in the buttocks, perhaps the feet on the floor, our backs, where there is obviously a sense of connection or the absence of separation. The body can always be used as an anchor to the present moment. If we allow our attention to come out of the usual monkey mind or thought stream, notice the sensations of the body. Notice the movement of the stomach as it rises and falls. Join this sensation with the sensations of the body in the chair. And allow yourself to become a body conscious, much more than somewhere identified with the thinking mind, the thought stream. And if we find we're distracted by thought, feeling, image, use the breath and the sensations of the body to return here, allowing attention to gently detach from the narrative of the thoughts, the topic, the person, the past, the place, and return to the knowing of presence. Which is to return to peace. If we don't think about it, so if we don't use words, thoughts, memory, images, what's wrong with right now? And don't use words or thoughts to answer the consideration. Notice, look to see if anything is missing right now. Can anything be added to this direct experience, not the idea of the experience, but the direct experience of the presence happening to us? Can anything be added to it to improve it? Or is it, in fact, whole? Without thought, memory, past. Is there nothing missing? Using our imaginations, let's imagine ourselves being 2 weeks old. I'm sure nearly all of us can say none of us remember being 2 weeks old, perhaps even a year old. This is simply that what we call later memory is in the first 18 to 20 months learning and repeating basic functions, movement, sensation, smell, touch, repetition, disgust even, discomfort. Yet as we imagine ourselves to be 2 weeks old, we don't know any of these words. We have no useful language. We don't know forms, people, places. We don't know separation. We don't know me and you, or you and I. We know only experience, but we don't know. It's called experience. And we don't know we are knowing it. There is namelessly that which the words knowing and experience mutually point to. So let's imagine that. And notice that that same knowing, experiencing, is still present, is still here. If we set aside words, past memory, name. And in fact, we don't even know our name. We don't know we need a name. We certainly don't have a personality, need a personality. We haven't formed a personality. We are just knowing, experiencing. And perhaps there's a movement of the knowing of experience as we wake. We've just woken up and soon a sensation arises, one more that we don't have a name for. Later on as adults we would call this hunger. But there's a sensation that arises in the knowing, and a sense of lack, the absence of something, arises as that sensation. Soon this becomes uncomfortable and we become distressed by this sense of absence as the growing sensation dominates the experience of being. Our automatic response to this, the following sensation, we would later call crying. So out of the sense of lack, stress is applied, and a response to the sense of lack and the stress is a noise that is made. And as a result of the noise, the sense of lack soon disappears. We experience comfort, the return of comfort, familiarity, and of course we are being fed, so by the application of sustenance, there's a return to what we might later call wholeness or balance or completion. Notice that same sense of wholeness and balance and completion right now. Without thoughts, without words, without memory, without reference to the past. And this cycle, this pattern, this primary foundational function of the human experience seemingly cycles throughout the day, and the days build into weeks, into months, years, and we develop. And as our senses become tuned, our eyes open, soon our eyes open, and we begin to see colour. The knowing of experience has different tones and textures, colours. We see distance, perspective. Yet in primary development, we still have no language. There is just the knowing experience that now has colours and shapes added to it. If we open our eyes for a moment and we look at the room as a baby would look at the room, as a 4-month-old baby would look at the room, and without labelling the things in the room that we're in, notice the presence of seeing, not things, but seeing itself with a capital S. Notice that seeing is happening in the experience of seeing and not in the object seen. The lamp isn't known in the lamp. The window isn't known in the window. They are known in the knowing of experience, without form, without names, without labels. And we don't have a word for colour, or colours, or the names for different colours. But we can see tone and shape and pretty things without knowing they're pretty things, things that are pleasing to the eye. And so as babies, our eyes scan and we take in distance and perspective. Let's close our eyes again and return to the knowing of nameless, wordless experience. And allow the breathing function to anchor us wordlessly, formlessly, namelessly in the knowing, experiencing that we know. And what does a 2-week-old baby know of things? Of feeling foolish, of feeling worse than, or better than, or wounded, or shamed. Or successful, or a failure. A 2-week-old baby whether loved or unloved, knows nothing of being loved or unloved. It knows and is knowing, experiencing, and movements of experiencing. That shift between what we would later call comfortable and uncomfortable. But a 2-week-old baby knows nothing of comfortable and uncomfortable, but just the knowing of experiencing. So notice now the knowing of experiencing. There's a voice describing knowing and experiencing. Spaces when the voice disappears, only to return. But the knowing of the experience of the voice isn't known in the voice. It is known, we might first say, within us. Is the voice known in the voice? Or is it known where I am? So by 18 months, 20 months, we have developed sufficiently to begin to know sound. We know sound, and we identify the tone and the timbre and the frequency and the shape of a sound that has no cultural reference point, or could be in any language at this point. And the most frequent one would be the sound of our name. We've been called this name for our entire life so far. And so now our senses are developed sufficiently that we see and we hear, we taste, we smell, and we sense, we feel in the body. And so we begin to identify this repeated word, our name, as in reference to me. We might hear the name David, Sarah, Jenny, Graham, Tarquin, Sebastian, Felicity, Tina. And we turn our head. We respond, we react to what we know to be the most familiar word. And soon we begin to identify everything about our unique perspective on the life we are beginning to first inhabit. And our name is the umbrella term above all that appears in the knowing of experience and comes and goes and rises and falls and brings us once more in patterns and cycles every day into that same cycle of comfortable and uncomfortable, pleasant and unpleasant, wholeness and a sense of lack. And life continues until the end in those lines, along those lines. We develop and we flourish and we become somebody. And we set out into the world to become somebody based on that fundamental movement, ever-present knowing of experience. A usual word for this is I. a word we use or reference in some form or another thousands of times a day. Every movement of our eyes, every time we're listening, every time we're speaking, every time we move into ego states and are attempting to prove our worthiness in relation to the interaction we might be having with other people, or simply a conversation in our head, that reference point is ever present. And the influence of our culture, of our development, of our family, of our time in history, drives where we feel individually we can find comfort and wholeness, and where we can continue to escape absence and a lack of whatever. And all of this amalgamates into our search for happiness, meaning and definition, purpose, and a drive for success, to overcome what we consider to be, or have known previously, perspectives of failure. So we search and we search, and the eye through which the moment is split for us, the seeing eye, the egoic eye, is ever reevaluating and reassessing the moment in order to ensure its performance is one of worthiness. It knows, the egoic eye knows unworthiness and failure and feeling like a fool and shame and everything difficult about the human experience. And so, having known these experiences in the past, we continue to seek and search in the splitting of the second for power and purpose, autonomy, control, safety, security, when our instincts drive us forward. Have you ever entered a room and felt less than? Have you ever done so and noticed some mechanism or some way in which the mind creates more than? Perhaps it judges someone else. I'm not as good as these people, but at least I'm not as bad as that person or these people, and so on and so it goes. And we move our way through life, through this sense of self and separation, in order to finally, in every moment, bring about that sense of wholeness, completion, and knowing without form, without lack, that we knew when we were 2 weeks old, before we began to identify as this separate individual personality and began to try and evidence and prove the worthiness of that character created. Now, if we look now, we can, if our eyes are still closed, or if not, let's close them. With our eyes closed, let's once more imagine we are 2 weeks old. Language is irrelevant to us. And notice the presence in the body and in the simple act of simply being, of the knowing, experiencing, or the peaceful, gentle, ordinary bliss and happiness that we fundamentally are, that we always have been, that we have in fact never left. And it is this knowing, experiencing, in which the I thought, the seeming vantage point, and the personality that is the claimer of the doing, of the I, of the I-ness, that looks for happiness outwardly, as I am seeking happiness in outside objects and all the prior conditioning that drives that search. Prior to the I thought, the space in which the I thought wakes up in bed in the morning. Can you recall that? We wake up, and then the first thought is, I am awake. Prior to that I thought is the ever-present, never-absent peace and wholeness that the identity of the I thought seeks to find in works, actions, relationships, people, places and things. We finally see the presence of the phrase from the teacher, having never left the house, we are looking for the way home.